The Orlando Magic have made their first signing of the 2024 NBA free agency period, and that is signing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to a 3-year, $66 million deal that is going to bring him from the Denver Nuggets to the Orlando Magic. Gives us a ton of veteran leadership, and it's just what the doctor ordered in the backcourt as far as shooting. Now, we're going to get into today everything that move means for the franchise, what it can mean for the potential moves in the next 24 to 48 hours, and what led the Orlando Magic to end up getting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But first, I would love to hear from everybody in the comments. Do you think that this is a selling point for them to get a player like Paul George? I think it is personally. I think it shows that the front office is serious about winning, and it indicates that they're willing to spend a ton of money, because if you were to acquire Paul George on top of this contract, on top of Franz and Paolo eventually down the line, you're getting into the first and second apron potentially as far as the salary cap. So it shows that this front office is certainly dedicated to the win now mantra. Do you think, because I do, that is going to be something that entices Paul George, could potentially swing the man to come down to Orlando? But let's get into what exactly led up to this deal. Well, I think it's been the interest in Paul George, the lack of interest with Klay Thompson. It's been that Klay's going to now go interview with teams, have sit-downs with the Clippers, the Lakers, the Mavericks, teams that aren't the Magic, essentially. He's not interested, and those talks seem to have cut off. But Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, as well as Malik Beasley from the Bucks, had always been kind of rumored to be attached to the Magic. Now, we didn't know exactly where their eyes were, where they were looking, how far ahead they were looking, if they were looking at Paul George, the big fish, or if they were going to try to get somebody earlier to entice him. We didn't know exactly what they were looking for, but they got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They got their shooter. They got a guy who could play defense in the backcourt. When we looked at this team from last year, they had a bottom 5 offensive rating and a top 5 defensive rating. In that Cavs series, when Paolo Banchero wasn't scoring, there was no scoring. There was no scoring from anywhere outside of Paolo Banchero for that series consistently. Jalen Suggs could only do as much as he could. He had 2 good shooting games, but that wasn't going to be enough. Franz Wagner, same issue, and obviously had a really, really terrible Game 7. There needs to be a veteran guy who can be more consistent, and I think that that's exactly what the Magic are getting here with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. It makes sense. If you eliminate Klay Thompson, if you don't want to spend money on Malik Beasley after he ended up getting benched towards the end of the year with the Bucks, you get a 2-time champion, a guy who's been to multiple finals, a guy who's played well in the playoffs, and a guy who's shooting about 40% from the three-point line. I think that this is a great fit. It works, and it still leaves a lot of different possibilities open. Now, those other possibilities are going to include Isaiah Hartenstein. You could get a guy in the front court. I don't know what that means for Mo Wagner, but you declined his deal his option and Joe Ingles' option. Right now, I think Joe Ingles is gone. I don't think that there's going to be, unless he comes back on a very discounted rate, I don't really see the need for the Magic to then go out to try to get him. Right now, I'm looking at different kinds of free agents, and I'd say that the Magic might just stand pat for right now, and I think they're really going to try to make a push for Paul George. It's been recently obviously reported that Paul George is done with the Clippers, and he's going to consider the Sixers. They're a heavy front runner right now. He's going to consider either the Sixers or the Magic to go to. I think the Orlando Magic, after signing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, are now going to try to go for that. They've said, look, we've got our floor, we've got our safety net, but we don't want to neglect this potential gem that you could get, right, with Paul George. So I think that that's what this Kentavious Caldwell-Pope signing will bring for the future, and what it meant or how we ended up getting to this point. Now, obviously a guy that we had been connected to for a while. Now, getting into just the overall feeling about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and how that could also lead the Orlando Magic to make moves elsewhere. I mentioned the Joe Ingles part of it, right? Joe Ingles is most likely not going to be a part of this team, but the starting lineup for this Magic team is really sound. You've got Suggs, you've got KCP, Franz, Wendell Carter Jr. at the 5, and there's been some reports about potential trades, about other teams being potentially interested. That could be something I could see. And you obviously got Paolo at the 4. Now, right now, if I'm looking around, there's tons of different options with the bench, and there's tons of different possibilities that I could see happening with KCP and with the front office, but I think for the most part they're probably going to have to stand pat. Now, he was on the short list, and it's going to be difficult to get a guy like Hartenstein, because obviously Hartenstein is going to be very expensive. Now, the Magic have a ton of cap room. They had $50 million. This will suck about 20 of it this year-ish, but I would still say that they can make more moves as time goes on, because I could see them making a trade to try to get somebody out of there to pay for the Paul George thing. This also helps with the salary cap floor, because the floor is around $120 million. The payroll last year was about $145. You're losing a guy like Fultz, who had a $17 million contract last year, so you need to spend some of that money. So I don't really see this as a thing where they lose a ton of money. I'd say when you're looking at the starting 5 for this team, I think you're impressed. I think you like what you see, and I think the bench is kind of thin right now. There certainly is going to have to be more moves outside of Paul George, but I think this KCP thing gives you a lot of flexibility, and I think that's the main point to drive home here, is that it gives you the flexibility. Now, as far as what this is going to mean for some of the young guys, I think a lot of people automatically assume that the young guys needed some sort of mentorship. I think Paul George could be that guy, but I think KCP can bring it. He's a veteran who has been in playoff situations that have certainly tested his will and his battle, his drive. And I think that if we're going to give up guys like Mo Wagner, guys like Joe Ingles, guys like Markelle Fultz, that's most of the veterans on this team. You're going to need a guy to step in, and I think that's exactly what KCP can do. Now, I think that about covers everything for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. So just let me know down in the comments, do you think that this signing will entice Paul George? I definitely think it's one of the better ones that we have seen from the Magic in recent years. Certainly a lot better than Joe Ingles was last year, and I think that this is a very good indicator that this front office is in win-now mode. And after, of course, they drafted 23-year-old Tristan da Silva, if that wasn't already enough of an indicator that they're trying to win now, this signing definitely should be. But that's all the time I have for today. We'll see you on the next big free agent move coming soon.